That also one second. A very good morning to everyone. My name is Aswin Balasubramaniam, and I'm here to present our paper titled Exploring Runners' Preferences of Drone-Based Feedback to Support Their Well-Being. On behalf of my co-authors, Reidsma, Mohammad, Obaid, and Dirk Heylen. So running is a very popular sport and is practiced by a lot of individuals. The popularity of running is such that there exists a plethora of running interaction technology that is mainly aimed at supporting runners' activities. This ranges from applications where you can share your running activities to specific sensors that are placed in your body to record your heart rates or motions. Most of them, however, do not provide real-time feedback. And however, those that do provide very minimal feedback on very select running parameters to support performance and prevent injuries. And those that do provide real-time feedback to support performance and prevent injuries require a lot of sensors attached to the runners. However, earlier works have indicated that runners prefer and could benefit from real-time feedback to improve their performance and prevent injuries, all while being unencumbered, such that they can run freely without requiring attaching any external sensors. Of all the possible technologies that can support this, drones show a very high potential to fill this gap, and earlier systematic reviews within the field of human-drone interactions have showcased the potential of drones to support exertion activities. Moreover, the existing limited work in the field of runner-drone interaction have shown examples of how drone motions, drones with cameras, speakers, or projections can provide runners with relevant feedback. Given that the drones have the ability to record videos and stream it in real time, development in AI makes it possible to analyze runners and videos and estimate joint locations, which then would allow us to extract various running parameters in real time. However, despite all the possibilities of a drone to support runners, there has been little to no work done, especially that investigates runners' preferences for feedbacks that they would prefer receiving through a drone. More specifically, for a drone that functions as a coach, which supports runners' well-being during runs. And this is a function that has been identified by several works in the field of human-drone interaction. Therefore, in our paper, we carried out an investigation of the research question, how would runners like a drone to present them real-time feedback on relevant running parameters to support their well-being? To do this, we designed a user study, one that allowed runners to reflect on a meaningful indoor running activity that acquainted them to various forms and functions running parameters could be presented to them while running. This study consisted of the following steps, and I elaborate on them further in the following slides. We recruited runners within the universities in an organic manner through flyers and word of mouth. The interested participants were sent a pre-study evaluation to assess their self-reported running activity levels and running motivation skills. On the day of the study, the runners were provided a summary of the activities that they expected to do. The first being a running activity where they had to go through 4 different zones of exertion that mimic a typical outdoor running session. During the running activity, to check whether the runners reached the necessary zones, we used the rate of perceived exertion levels. This sheet was used by the runner to let us know if they reached the necessary levels of exertion during the run. The runners were then provided these cards that provided a summary of the activity and biomechanical related running parameters we shortlisted for the study. These parameters are some of the commonly tracked running parameters and also play a role in the motivation levels, enhance performance, and help identify potential injuries. Moreover, we ensure that these parameters can be extracted from the information that we can get from videos. After the runners selected the parameters they preferred feedback on during each phase of the run, it was noted down on the sheet on the left. The runners were then told they would receive example feedbacks on the selected running parameters. The examples are presented to them through 3 different modalities, namely visual, audio, and haptic, and had 2 different functions which either provided them as alerts or instructions to improve the particular parameter. And when they were running, they were asked to rate the presented feedback on the ease of comprehending the information and ease of acting upon the information on a scale of 1 to 10. During the first 2 steps of the study, the runners were not made aware of the technology behind presenting the feedback, as we wanted to ensure their feedback preferences were based on genuine requirements rather than be influenced by the mention of drones. In the second step, that's the experiential activity, the runners were then instructed to wear a heart rate sensor before the start of the run. This was to cross-check if the runners were transitioning through the various exertion zones. After this, they were instructed to run in a shape of an 8 in the designated running space. During the run, the runners are provided examples on the feedback through visual means, through infographics printed on sheets, and through motions of ball. The audio feedback examples were provided vocally by the researcher, and haptic feedback was simulated by tapping regions of the body. In order to get to the necessary exertion level, we asked the runners to step on a treadmill to make the process go quicker after they completed responding to the feedback stimuli for each phase of the run. After the exertion activity, we jumped onto the reflection phase of the study. The runners engaged in a reflection activity using a worksheet we designed using the 4 exertion lenses as proposed by Mueller. These included responding body, where the runners were asked to reflect on the change of the body's internal state during the run. The moving body, the runners were asked to reflect on the movement of the body parts relative to one another. The sensing body, where the runners were asked to reflect on the sensations and experiences felt by the body during the run. And relating body, the impact of body other than themselves in the environment. The runners were provided example on what each lens meant to help them with the reflection better. The objective of the reflection was to help ground their ideas to the preferences. After the reflection activity began the ideation phase of study. The ideation phase had some sub-steps and not just the ideation activity. The first of which was they were told that the drone was the one that mediated the technology, At which point we showed them the DJI Mavic Pro as an example drone. Next, we assessed the likability of the participants towards drones through the Godspeed questionnaire before the ideation activity and after the ideation activity to understand how their likability changed during the entire study. We then proceeded to show them examples of the drone's capability to help them provide feedback on the running parameter. The first of which was showing them a real-time demo of how a drone could calculate the knee angle in real time and provide an audio feedback when the angle is greater than 90 degrees. Second, we provided them with cards that are examples from existing drone research that provided them context on how drone can help provide feedback through various modalities. After this, they were provided with another sheet on which they were asked to shortlist a list of running parameters they wanted feedback through a drone. And they were asked to come up with ideas on how they would like a drone to provide them feedback on the preferred running parameters. They were asked to look back at the inputs they provided during the runs and the reflection sheet during this process of ideation. In total, we had recruited 25 participants, 15 of which were male and 15 which were male and 10 were female. The age group ranged from 19 to 52 years, and they had varying range of running experience from few weeks to 25 years. Prior to the study, runners had run an average distance of 3.5 kilometers to 42 kilometers. Most of them utilized technologies to track their run and had high levels of motivation levels to get engaged in the running activity and were physically active and were healthy. And before the study, no one had ever run with a drone before as well. For this paper, we specifically analyzed those data points that help us answer our research question. For that, we first analyzed the running parameters selected by the runners and the ideas generated for those parameters by the runners. And to provide proof that runners underwent the next necessary exertion levels, we also analyzed the heart rate values and the rate of perceived exertion. And by assessing the likability of drones before and after the ideation activity, we could assess if the perception of drones' capability changed positively or not. The analysis of the rate of perceived exertion that we recorded during the run and the heart rate showed that almost every participant reached the necessary exertion rates during each phase of the running activity, suggesting that the feedback ratings accurately reflected their mental, physical, and cognitive loads. The responses to the Godspeed questionnaire shows that the participants' likability after the ideation either remained neutral or slightly more positive, indicating that the participants' ideas were not negatively influenced by a lack of information or a belief that drones could not support the running activity. Through an initial round of data analysis and coding, we identified the running parameters that participants prefer to receive feedback on from the drone, as well as a preferred presentation format, and is collated in this one plot. The top 4 popular iData parameters were pace, followed by time, followed by trunk length, and then heart rate. The runners' ideas show that they prefer being informed about their current state using numbers, percentages, or level for activity-related parameters, But then there were few who desired feedback to achieve target pace as well. For biomechanical parameters, most participants preferred instructional feedback for technique improvement, with only few requiring feedback on their current non-optimal state. Feedback through visual projections of pace were the most commonly generated idea. Participants also expressed a clear preference for audio feedback delivered through earphones, as it was seen less distracting and required less response latency and cognitive effort. Some participants preferred haptic feedback for parameters sensed by the body. They believe that amplifying or accentuating these sensations could make the feedback feel more natural and lead to more quicker responses. The initial coding revealed that the ideation data could be analyzed further to uncover more information, more specifically some design considerations for feedback through a drone for a runner. Apart from converting the information on the idea worksheet, we also transcribed the discussion that were recorded during the ideation session, which led to this massive Miro board of all the text that we transcribed. The transcribed and the collated data was analyzed further following the reflexive thematic analysis methodology presented by Braun and Clark to conceptualize various drone feedback design consideration. To conduct this analysis, myself and a research assistant coded the data independently to ensure objectivity in the analysis. Before the coding process started, we ensured that we positioned ourselves accordingly as presented by the methodology in the reflexive thematic analysis book, as indicated here. And during the generation of the codes, we focused on one objective, that is, what are the feedback design considerations we can uncover from the data? The analysis led to the generation of two themes, namely feedback presentation and feedback timing and frequency. Our study revealed that runners had diverse and well-informed feedback presentation preferences, which were mainly rooted in their personal preferences of wanting to maintain their flow during the run. These themes had further categories under them, and I will go into more detail about them in the following slides. The first category for the feedback presentation was non-distracting feedback. Feedback, as requested by the runner, should be non-distracting while pulling the attention to allow them to maintain their flow during runs. There was a consensus on less distracting feedback designs in the form of alerts presented through earphones or haptic sleeves. The second category was interpretable feedback that allows runners to easily interpret the presented details. Depending on the runner's characteristics and type of run, the level of detail and simplicity may vary. The next was intuitive feedback. Feedback should be understood without burdening the minimal attention span of runners. And some ideas use certain qualities of modalities and map them to certain parameters as well, which included haptic to accentuate body sensations and motions, and drone motions to represent body motions. The fourth category was privacy-conscious feedback. Runners, as they indicated during the discussions, value their privacy as such, do not prefer the data to be presented publicly. Some were open to public displays of information if they are coded and contextually understood only by the runner, or if the feedback is geared towards encouragement, striking a good balance between privacy and public feedback. The fifth category was environment-aware feedback. There were certain feedbacks modality that is affected by the environment. As such, the bright conditions or uneven surfaces may hinder projections. Haptic feedback may be difficult to discern on uneven terrains due to vibrations already experienced during running. Use of speakers could disturb quiet areas, and drone movements may be misunderstood with their prior context, especially when navigating obstacles. The categories for the feedback timing and frequency were feedback triggered during incorrect motion. Some prefer feedback on specific parameters when the body is deviated from the optimal level or preset values. Second was to achieve desired or target motion. There were some preferences for continuous feedback on certain parameters like pace and cadence to help maintain the desired or optimal levels of motion throughout the run. Third was signaling during the run, where some expressed a preference for having the autonomy to receive feedback only when they made specific gestures. Some preferred having it triggered during certain time levels so that they can track the progress and performance over time. Some preferred triggered by distance, similarly where they would like to monitor the performance progress over distance markers. And others preferred receiving feedback based on extreme changes in the exhaustion level or physiological changes. Then there was a frequency of feedback. Some found that constant feedback may be annoying and prefer self-selected intervals so that they can prevent overwhelming amount of information and they can maintain the flow of their run. Well, some preferred the frequency to be triggered always, where they wanted to make sure that they maintain target motion throughout the run. These are some of the discussion points. So runners preferred feedback presentations that were aligned with their established running habits. That is information about the current activity level, which is also consistent with earlier research. where runners rely on trackers for notification about activity parameter deviations, and familiar feedback presentations help maintain their cognitive flow. Second, their inclination towards instructional feedback for biomechanical parameters likely stems from their goals of performance improvement and injury prevention, because earlier work has indicated running-related injuries could demotivate runners and lead to discontinuation of running. Third, the runner's ability to articulate the reason behind their preferences in our study indicates that our study successfully fostered an experiential awareness and allowed meaningful reflections. However, our study had some limitations. Some runners felt the space to run was small and they faced a few challenges during their run. And some felt that they felt overwhelmed with the presentation of feedback during the activity. And though none mentioned that this impacted their responses a lot, but this could be further analyzed further. The way haptic feedback for cadence was provided could have introduced a limitation. So for safety reasons, feedback for cadence was provided near their foot on the ground so that it does not obstruct their run. And the runners are required to imagine the sensation on their foot. And since a number of participants expressed a preference for haptic of other feedback, it could have been possible that the way we presented this feedback could have disrupted the way they preferred their ideas to be presented, the feedback to be presented. The last limitation could be participants' prior knowledge and experience impacting their rating of the feedback or the feedback presentation. Some runners utilize coaches or smart devices, which could influence their preferences of feedback representations. As runners become more acquainted with feedback presentations or understand more about the run, the requirements and preferences may evolve. And we believe that this warrants further analysis, maybe through a longitudinal study. One of which could be exploring the preferences among runners with different characteristics and motivations through cluster analysis, wherein we could understand the differences between different clusters of runners or similarities within a cluster of runners. And as you saw, there are a varied range of feedback presentation ideas that Rana mentioned. And similarly, this would impact the hardware and software design considerations of drones, which would require further investigation in the future. In summary and conclusion, we devised a methodology that allowed runners to reflect on an activity that replicated the transition of the running exertion level while providing context on various feedback presentation method. This helped us uncover runners' preferences for running parameter feedback presented through a drone. And we also identified some drone feedback design considerations through this. We would like to acknowledge the following. And since I'm running short of time, I'm going to quickly wrap up. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation, very inspiring, and I think with a lot of insights about ways to design feedback systems and also the data, what data to be need. Is there any questions? We have time for one question.
Thank you for the talk, and I missed most of it, but I was outside discussing exactly this issue. So I missed why the drone seems to be part of it. I mean, not a wearable for a runner. And it's interesting, a more theoretical, philosophical question, whether representations of our own activity change our understanding of ourselves. I mean, do you want to reflect on this?
So I could probably answer your first question, why drones? Well, from our initial research, we saw that to help improve performance and prevent injuries, we would require certain parameters. And wearables such as smartwatches, which is very less intrusive, do not help us get that detailed information, whereas video analysis helps us do that. And since a drone is basically a flying robot and we can mount different sensors and actuators, we can mount a camera on top of a drone and have it follow the runner without it being unencumbered and still get a lot of these data sets. And that's the reason we opted to utilize a drone. And to answer your second questions, that having more data helps runners understand themselves further is a very good point. And I do address that a little bit in the paper, wherein as they evolve, as they get more data about themselves, the preferences or requirements of what they require from the data or the feedback that they get will also evolve with them. And that definitely requires some investigation. At this point, I'm not sure I can talk about that further, but it's something that I've pointed out as well. Thank you so much.